Channel on TuneIn presents
It Sucks to Be Right
with comedian Tara Devlin from RepublicanDirtyTricks.com and comedian Sherry D. Sutton. So, that's the sound of fascism coming to America.
That is the noise. That's the early cry.
Right, that's the cry. The thing that really concerns me is the normalization of Donald Trump. The fact is, let's not kid ourselves here. Donald Trump is a fascist. And as I always say, in every Republican chest beats the heart of fascism. Now it is unleashed. And the liberal establishment that pushed Hillary on us, and let me say, I supported Hillary when she was the Democratic Party nominee, because given the alternative. But I was a Bernie supporter, and you know what? People are saying, don't talk about I told you so, or point fingers.
Well, we need to be reflecting and reorganizing and figuring out how to move forward from this.
Exactly. Of course, we're pointing fingers because that's how you learn, grow, evolve, and move on.
Exactly.
In a successful manner. Now we have the liberal establishment, the media especially, and I'm thinking of George Stephanopoulos, who's doing these reports. Oh, give him a chance. We need to come together. How do you come together with somebody who ran a campaign of hate and division against targeted minority groups?
You know, is it James Baldwin who said, my tolerance ends at your oppression?
Exactly.
You know,
it's not
I don't have to tolerate hate. I don't have to be open-minded to a Trump presidency that would put in place a cabinet full of people who are going to try and ensure that minorities stay oppressed.
Exactly. And strip health care from millions. These are people that think torture is strength. Now, I was watching this movie, which is, it's just a movie, obviously, but it's based on reality. It's called Anthropoid. It's about the Nazi occupation of Czechoslovakia and the resistance. And in this movie, it was pretty brutal and realistic. There's scenes of torture where the Nazis are torturing their prisoners. And all I could think of, this is what Donald Trump and his right-wing fascist cohorts consider strength. That's what they think. We have to be strong. I'm gonna waterboard. They're even on TV saying, well, if radio DJs volunteer to be waterboarded, then it's not torture. Neglecting to note the fact that this radio DJ volunteered to be tortured, and then after he was tortured, he said, yeah, that's torture. It's barbaric. This is barbarism. This is racism. And the fact that the people who voted for Trump, they're so emboldened. Now, when you have the KKK having a victory march in North Carolina for a president, when you have the German chancellor releasing a statement, Germany, a country that has a little bit of experience with authoritarianism, releasing a statement saying, we will work with Trump in so much as he respects human rights and detailing all the concerns. So this is not being alarmist. We have to be prepared.
That's exactly what I wanted to jump in and say, is this is now a time for us to actually reorganize ourselves, relook at our platforms, and stand up.
We have to be prepared to go into the streets and get arrested.
That's what I meant by standing up, because I do believe it will mean brutality. I think it will mean being arrested. I think it will mean being at the hand of violence. I think there will be people who will pay the ultimate price. Yes. We may be two of those people if that is what we're called to do.
I agree. And I think that part of the training that we in organizing has to involve nonviolent resistance. We will have to stand up by sitting down and bringing this whole machine to a stop. Just like the civil rights workers had to train themselves to sit there while Trumpanzee ancestors screamed behind their heads, get off this lunch counter, you N-word. This is an assault from all fronts. You don't have to be gay. You don't have to be Muslim. You don't have to be a Mexican. You don't have to be somebody who might die because they don't have access to health care. This is all of us together. Right. And the fact that the liberal elite that pushed Hillary upon us, that said nobody's going to elect the 74-year-old Democratic Social, whatever his age is. And we were telling them, you don't see that in this time of change. That's what the Republican Party was saying. Who's going to elect this guy? This guy's a clown. As he rolled over all the Republican establishment. Now they're saying, oh, we got to give this Trump a chance.
It's time for the DNC to go. It's time for us to clean house.
It wasn't
clean
just
house.
The emails. It wasn't just
not just the FBI. It wasn't. No, there was.
No, it was neoliberalism that brought us to this point. Neoliberalism makes a authoritarian fascist dictator possible. And instead of electing an FDR, we got us a Hitler here. A vote for Donald Trump was nothing but a hate crime. And now is our time to stand up and put our bodies on the gears and stop this from destroying us indefinitely.
Well, you've just heard it here, and I'm going to stick with you, my friend. So this is Sherry D. Sutton and Tara Devlin for It Sucks to Be Right. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and keep listening for more on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn.
We stick together, we win.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
You know, we had a guest in the audience this evening. And Vice President-elect Pence, I see you walking out, but I hope you will hear us just a few more moments. There's nothing to move here, ladies and gentlemen. There's nothing to move here. We're all here sharing a story of love. We have a message for you, sir. We hope that you will hear us out. And I encourage everybody to pull out your phones and tweet and post, because this message needs to be spread far and wide, okay? Vice President-elect Pence, we welcome you, and we truly thank you for joining us here at Hamilton and American Musical. We really do. We, sir, we are the diverse America who are alarmed and anxious that your new administration will not protect us, our planet, our children, our parents, or defend us and uphold our inalienable rights, sir. But we truly hope that this show has inspired you to uphold our American values and to work on behalf of all of us. All of us.
Communist. That's some commie stuff right there.
This show, this wonderful American story told by a diverse group of men and women of different colors, creeds, and orientations.
Sackos. Losers. Douchebag. Well, thank you, Hamilton. Thank you. Not that there aren't a million annoying things about this story. But who says Mike Pence gets those tickets? Do you know how long you have to wait online for those tickets? Who says that a gay basher who believes in conversion therapy gets the hottest Broadway tickets? Send him to Lacage. I mean, really. Send him to the producers. Let him sing Springtime for Hitler. He won't realize it was a joke. He just won't understand. Send him to Les Mis. Do you know what I mean? You know what? Donald Trump's going to go to Rent now? 565,600 minutes. Send him to West Side Story, for God's sakes. Why do they send Mike Pence, a gay-bashing hater with thin skin, to see the best show in Manhattan? I don't understand. I mean, if Hamilton toured Indiana, that would be the biggest minority community outside of Gary and Indianapolis. Wow. I'm like, already the influence peddling has begun, really. And at 6:22, must have been a matinee. At 6:22, Donald Trump is tweeting, the cast and producers of Hamilton, which I hear overrated. Well, I've seen your apartment. You have no taste. I mean, none. Those Iranian dictator chairs, really, give them back to the flea market you got them from. Some guy spray painting grandma's furniture and selling it to Donald Trump. Good for you. But, oh my God. I mean, he says, the cast and producers of Hamilton, which I hear is overrated, should immediately apologize to Mike Pence for their terrible behavior. Donald Trump is the Aaron Burr in this Hamilton situation. Thin skin, very thin skin. And then, of course, we had SNL, which was really, I mean, the rest of the show, not so good, but this part was. This was so good.
Mr. Trump, are you ready for your first meeting?
Kellyanne, what are people saying about my cabinet appointments? Do they love them?
They're certainly very passionate about them. I just saw one very nice tweet saying that they were great for our nation and the future of our children.
Tremendous. Who sent that?
David Duke.
Kellyanne, can I say something? I just want to thank you for all you've done. I wouldn't be president without you.
I think about that every day. Also, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is here. You remember General Dunlap?
Here he is.
Thanks for coming, General.
My pleasure, sir. Thought we could take a moment to discuss strategy before your upcoming term.
Sure.
We've been stuck fighting ISIS in Jabhat al-Nusra for 6 years now. So when we found out that you had a secret plan, it really energized us.
That's right. A plan. Very secret.
Well, whatever it is, we're really looking forward to hearing it come January. It's only 7 weeks away, so let's save some lives together, sir.
Tremendous. Love it. Thank you. Okay, right. Here we go. Here we go. Big plan. Big plan. Google, what is ISIS? Oh my, 59 million results.
59 million results.
Siri, how do I kill ISIS? This is a BlackBerry.
That's my mother. We elected my mother. Google. What is ISIS? 59 million results. Siri, how do I kill ISIS? Oh, it's a BlackBerry. Yeah, we elected Grandma. We elected Loretta. Commander-in-Chief. And then, the thing ends with, Mike Pence coming in and, he tells Mike Pence, thank God for you, Mike, because you're the best reason I know that I won't be impeached. And then he asked Mike Pence, you're going to do everything, aren't you? You're going to do it all, aren't you? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I am. And then what does he do? I mean, so they portray him on Saturday Night Live as being completely unable to be presidential. And then he throws the Twitter tantrum just to prove their point. Beautiful. He tweeted about Saturday Night Live. Now, you remember that Georgia Water guy? I had to have a fight with him over Saturday Night Live, whether we had to debate the journalistic merits of a comedy show. Holy crap. It's because of all the fake news. But Trump tweeted it was totally one-sided bias show, nothing funny at all. Equal time for us? Equal time for us? Who the hell is us? People without a sense of humor? Haters? Or maybe people that went to the big alt-right convention in Washington this week. Did you see this story? This is amazing. This is just the sickest, most twisted, seriously bizarre. This and the fake news story that we're going to do today. And of course, we're going to, I hope we can reach out to Richard Wolff, who is, he was a professor of economics at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and now he teaches at the New School in New York. I actually went there for one semester. It's an amazing school. He's got a BA in history from Harvard and an MA from Stanford and another MA from Yale and a PhD in economics also from Yale. So we'll talk to him in a little while and he'll make it nice and simple for you. That's why I dig him. But anyway, did you hear about this alt-right thing? This is like incredible. So they had this thing at the federal building that's named after Ronald Reagan in Washington on Saturday. And there were protesters outside the event and they were holding up, alt-right equals Nazis. And I didn't understand what was going on inside until the New York Times reported out what was going on inside. Okay. And what was going on inside was Richard Spencer, the leading ideologue of the dank meme minions. the Trumpanzee crowd. He was invited to this thing, and they saved him for last. He was like the most exceptional. He was the headliner. Let's put it that way. And so they saved him for last, and the crowd was so restless because all these other speakers, were saying, oh, well, we must denounce violence, and Hispanic citizens and Black Americans have nothing to fear from us. And the crowd was like, are we in the right meeting? Is this I don't know, because I'm wearing my brown shirt and it doesn't go with what they're saying. Then all of a sudden, Richard Spencer was introduced. And then the whole tone changed. He told the audience, 200 people, in the Ronald Reagan building, this must kill Ron Jr. This must really kill him. Because Ronald Reagan was a lot of things, and you may disagree with Ronald Reagan's politics and a lot of things, but at least Ronald Reagan was a deep thinker. Now, he stood up there in front of 200 people. They were mostly young men with the fashy haircut. And he started railing against Jews and smiling. He quoted Nazi propaganda in the original German. And he said America belonged to white people, whom he called the children of the sun. Children of the sun, children of the sun. I'll probably get flagged for that. Copyright infringement. Yeah. He said that the white people are the children of the sun, a race of conquerors and creators who had been marginalized. But now, in the era of President-elect Donald J. Trump, we're awakening to their own identity. It's an awakening, everybody. The white people didn't know they were sleeping through their privileged period. They missed it all. All that white privilege, and they slept right through it. How in the hell did that happen? Oh, that's right. Oxycodone. Sure. You slept right through your privileged period. Yeah, and he said, that these are exultant times for the alt-right movement. And as he finished, several of the audience members outstretched their arms in the salute of the Nazis. And Mr. Spencer and another person standing near him at the front of the room, it was not clear who, shouted, "Heil the people, heil victory." And the room shouted back. So they're now shouting at the wind is what they're doing. But they're in full regalia out there. They're having, just a fabulous time. And meanwhile, they don't understand, because of all the fake news, that their president is going to get impeached like really quickly. That's, and I need for them to get real news, because they are, you think our little protests, and that's all they are little protests. Some of them got out of control in Portland. I mean, a white riot in Portland was just amazing, to see that. But, some of them got out of control, and 71 people were arrested in Portland like last week. But the remainder of our protests are extremely, extremely peaceful. And frankly, we're going to talk a little bit later on about what's going on out there in North Dakota, just an hour south of Bismarck. It's an amazingly sick story about peaceful protesters trying to make, prayer camps to pray for their water. That's what they're doing, being attacked by these militarized police officers with every, a concussion grenade and water cannons. I mean, everything old is new again. We're bringing back the water cannons, except it's 23 degrees in North Dakota right now. And I can't tell you how many people had to go to the hospital for hypothermia last night. It was just an amazing thing. And if you were on my Facebook page, you saw that I was helping the people that were there, periscoping it to stream out their video to our audience. And it was really hard to watch. However, Donald Trump, and this is the thing about fake news, Donald Trump really does need to have some real news told to his supporters, because his supporters are armed. Ours are unarmed. Okay? Ours are unarmed. We form prayer circles. We do sit-ins. We do marches. We peaceably walk down the street in Manhattan. We'll do 50, 60 blocks because, we've got stamina because we believe in protein. Do you know what I mean? But these people are armed, and they threatened to riot if Donald Trump was not anointed president. They said that if Donald Trump didn't win, that there would be a civil war in this country. There would be, and take them at their word, because now all of a sudden they're going, oh, look at the left, whiny crybabies. And all you have to do is show them what they said, what they were going to do if Donald Trump didn't win. And then they go, yeah, well, he did. You lost. You loser. And I try to keep telling them, I didn't lose. I wasn't running for anything. America lost. Decency lost. Honesty lost. An conflicted presidency lost. Now, these articles that aren't being read out on the TV, these situations that Donald Trump has to deal with and won't. It's my prediction he won't, because he's already added, fuel to the fire, is his conflicts around the world. We have, you Constitution lovers, you. Did you forget about your favorite part of the Constitution? No, not the Second Amendment. It's inside the first. It's called the Emollients Clause. Okay? And basically what it says is the president can't get rich off the presidency. In fact, no government worker can use his public position for personal enrichment. Now, I know we think it's funny in this day and age because so many of them find a way to do that. But Donald Trump has business in Saudi Arabia, for God's sake. He's got 2 buildings in Saudi Arabia. He's got Chinese licenses. He's got buildings in India, the Trump Towers in Turkey. There was almost a coup in Turkey. And even when he was on Steve Bannon's show, before he was the president-elect, Steve Bannon was trying to get him to take a tough line against Turkey and say Turkey's going all Islamic and they're on the side of ISIS, and the conversation did not end up well because Donald Trump said, well, I'm a little conflicted. They may be doing business with ISIS, but I got Trump Towers there, and it's not just 1 tower, it's 2. It's 2 towers in Istanbul. That's exactly how he said it. Stand by.
Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com.
Well, the unthinkables happened. We have Donald Trump moving into the White House in 2017. Of course, this move brings extreme uncertainty to our country's financial future. I mean, you got the Don and his crew moving into the White House now, and who knows what they'll do to our economy. When he moves into the White House, everyone needs to get their own financial house in order before the Don and the crew have the time to do some serious economic damage to this country. Now, when it's time for financial security, it's time for gold. So call my friends at ITM Trading. Get a free gold kit. Learn why gold survives every government, every currency, every economic crisis. Gold's always brought its owners security in uncertain times just like this. Call ITM Trading at 1-888-OWN-GOLD. Get expert guidance from their precious metals consultants. They've helped tens of thousands of people navigate this market. They have the best reputation in the industry. Call 1-888-OWN-GOLD, 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1945. That was the day that 320,000 United Auto Workers went out on strike against General Motors. The strike was part of a wave of work actions that washed over the country after World War II. Workers were growing more and more frustrated that company profits were soaring while workers' wages remained stagnant. During the war, most unions had abided by no strike pledges. But once the war was over, workers wanted their fair share of the growing American economy. In just 1 year, 5 million workers participated in more than 4,500 strikes. The GM strikers demanded a 30% pay increase. Walter Reuther, president of the UAW, also insisted that the company could meet this demand without raising the prices of their vehicles. He asked the company to open their books so workers and the public could see the full details of the company's profits. GM refused. They characterized Reuther as a socialist for even making such an outrageous request. During negotiations, Harry Cohen, the GM Assistant Director of Personnel, told President Reuther, quote, "Why don't you get down to your size and get down to the type of job you're supposed to be doing as a trade union leader and talk about money you would like to have for your people and let the labor statesmanship go to hell for a while." The GM strike lasted 113 days. The workers won a 17.5% pay increase and improvements to vacation and overtime. But they did not get to look at GM's books or gain any say on how GM vehicles were priced.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit RandiRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
Here, listen to this. This is a little snippet of Steve Bannon's radio show.
Mr. Trump, we had Dr. Carson on earlier talking about his trip to Syria, but we started the show with our live reporters in Turkey, London, Paris, Rome, etc., talking about this fracas right now between Putin and Erdogan. The BBC, we've talked about this 10 days ago on Breitbart, and our listeners about Turkey making money off of ISIS oil. That one of the revenue streams, major revenue streams, is oil, as you've talked about. Turkey's been the middleman. Putin now, finally, 9 days after it's up on Breitbart, BBC lead story, Putin saying, hey, we got a problem here. Turkey's the middleman and making plenty of cash off ISIS and has skin in the game, keeping ISIS around. Erdogan immediately goes back and says, hey, you can prove it, I'll step down. If your plan in prosecuting this war as commander-in-chief of the United States, if you're elected president, in prosecuting the war, what do you do with Turkey? Is Turkey a reliable partner? I know they're a NATO ally. Are they a reliable partner?
Well, I have a little conflict of interest because I have a major building in Istanbul, and it's a tremendously successful job. It's called Trump Towers, 2 towers instead of 1. Not the usual 1, it's 2. And I've gotten to know Turkey very well, and they're amazing people. They're incredible people. They have a strong leader.
So even his own crony, Steve Bannon, says Turkey is making money off of ISIS oil. Who knows if any of what he, nothing, but the reaction to that news, whether it's fake or real, the reaction to that news for Donald Trump is ISIS schmisis. I have buildings in Turkey, and I got to protect my business. So I invited Professor Richard Wolff on the show. As I told you, he's, Harvard, Yale, twice, Stanford, the whole 9 yards. Used to teach at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, and now is in at the New School in New York, which is a fabulous school. I told you I went there for one semester. And I invited you on. Hi, Richard. Nice to meet you.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm glad you're on the phone because I invited you to discuss the populist rhetoric that Donald Trump was spewing versus the reality of Donald Trump.
Well, I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
Kind of hard to know where to start.
I know.
The gap is so staggering.
Well, let me get you started. I think, look, capitalism, unbridled, unregulated, deregulated, unleashed in its purest form, hurt so many people in this country. And Donald Trump was out there pretending that, even though he lives on the 58th floor in a triplex in Manhattan, that he understood the plight of coal country. And
that's right. It just tells you how desperate the people of America, the mass of the people of America are at this point, that they want so badly to have a change in an economic system that is really screwing them and screwing their children in a major way, that they would even stop and take seriously this out-of-control billionaire, playboy, New Yorker, in the worst sense of those words. That's how desperate. It's a sign of desperation that you have a guy who sits square in the middle of the top 1% or 1/100th of 1% as a credible candidate. It shows you how badly the system is dysfunctioning for the mass of people that they would even take that serious.
Yeah, and Hillary wasn't, reading her white papers on the campaign trail. She was running basically against him, and people didn't understand that she did have a different plan, which would have been better, but it was a middle way, and that's always the problem, isn't it? Just going...
Yeah, and I think she was also very badly hampered by deciding, which was a mystery to me when she did it, but she did it, that she was going to be the continuation of the great success of the Obama administration. That was not a success for the mass of people. Whatever you thought of Mr. Obama when he came in, promising, by the way, the same sort of hope and change that Mr. Trump, now in a kind of mockery, used to get himself into office, showing that people really want change. But Mrs. Clinton presented herself as pretty much more of the same, and that was the kiss of death, in my judgment, because the American people, even if they liked her on other grounds, wanted the change that she simply did not project as something she could or would do.
Yeah, it was missing. A lot of people, I paid very, very close attention to it. I'm sure you did too, but there was so many people that just didn't hear her saying anything that, related to making their lot in life better. They didn't hear that she was saying, pre-K for 4-year-olds. They didn't hear her saying biggest investment in infrastructure since World War II. They didn't hear her saying, college tuition in public universities free for everybody under 250. I mean, she just didn't stress that. The way she ran was against him, and there was so much wrong with him that it's kind of tempting to do it, but he baited her into making her whole campaign trashing him, and people
and even worse than that, Ricky, if I could interject, she kept portraying him as really different, as weird, as abnormal, as not even a conventional Republican, as being beyond the pale. She didn't understand that the American people wanted something radically different from what was happening to them. And the more she painted him as really different, the more she made his case for him. It was a kind of bizarre watching, like being on a train in slow motion as it heads into a stone wall, and you want to shout at the people, get out, stop the train, because you're heading for doom this way. I remember thinking, my goodness, who's advising her to portray herself in this way and to portray him? And then when you finish up by calling all the people that are rallying around him, who really want the kind of change that she could have been better at than he ever would be,
right?
Then she calls them all bad names like a deplorables, and she seals her own doom in this process. It's remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, and then he, but what's really remarkable is how he's walking around saying he's going to drink. I mean, the verbiage was, right out of Frank Luntz's playbook. It was amazingly good language if you really wanted anything different than what you were waking up to every single day. The Make America Great Again, and then they become a hashtag.
And to thumb his nose at all the establishments, to kind of be the naughty boy who says the unsayable and has the courage to portray that he is going to overthrow the old stodgy establishments, first in the Republican Party and now in the Democratic Party. He's the little play actor, faking it all the way through in this little psychodrama, and that people are so upset that they will actually imagine that this clownish character, whose economic policies, if you want to discuss that,
I do,
are really bizarre, strange things, who the chances of them working to help the average American are 1 in a million. You'd be better off betting on lottery tickets than this. This is crazy, but it is also a sign that the American situation is dire, that people would be so desperate as to vote for this.
Yeah, I hear you. I really do. And so, when he started talking about draining the swamp, it was just so he didn't, he's not going to drain the swamp. The swamp now has a concierge is what it is. So, right.
Well, let's start, if we could. Let's start with a couple of the economic policies that he is touting. Let me start with getting rid of expelling or deporting 3 or more million immigrants, undocumented immigrants.
What impact would that have on our economy, Professor Wolf?
Well, most of them would be awful. But even before we get into them, there is something so bizarre about this that I really have to say it. Here is a man who literally embodies all of the arrogance of the 1%, the richest people in America, who is telling all of us that the way to solve our economic problems is to really whack the bottom 1%. Undocumented immigrants are people at the very bottom of the pyramid of our society. They're people who don't get paid properly, who often don't even get paid the money they're owed, low as their wages are, because the unscrupulous employer knows very well that the undocumented immigrant can't go to the police, can't go to any government authority to get their injustice corrected because they don't have the documents, etc., etc. These are the most oppressed, exploited people in our society. So we're being told by a man from the 1% at the top that what we need to fix our society is to really hurt the 1% at the bottom. There is something so indecent, so unethical, so unchristian, if I may say so, about this, that it kind of boggles the mind that we live in a time where you could get away with this. But having said that, let's take a look at what happens. If you actually did this, if you threw out of the country these very poor 3, 5, 10 million, whatever it is, of undocumented immigrants, let's go through what's going to happen.
Okay.
First, those millions of people were spending money, buying clothing, buying food, renting apartments, driving cars. They're not going to be doing any of those things anymore, so that all kinds of businesses that depended on their customers being these people are going to go out of business. That's the first thing.
Okay.
The second thing, millions of businesses, large and small in America, employed these people, particularly in the fields of construction, in the fields of retail trade, in the fields of large institutional administrations like hospitals and so on. They took advantage of these low-wage workers and hired them. They're now going to lose their workers. And if they look around for other people, they're going to discover that people who are not undocumented immigrants do not have to submit to the treatment that they had gotten, do not accept and will not accept low wages the way undocumented immigrants have no choice but to do. And so all these businesses are going to discover that the wage costs of the people they use to replace the deported undocumented immigrant are going to be much higher. For many of them, they may not be able to survive their businesses if they have to pay proper wages. For many others, they will survive, but you can bet they're going to pass on the cost of higher wages in the form of higher prices to the rest of us to pay for the services of those now deported undocumented immigrants. It's going to therefore boost the price level in the United States, and it's going to create all kinds of difficulties as we work through the economic costs of all of this. And I want to stress that the problems we've had in the last 30 to 40 years of this economy, which are now coming to a head, have very little to do with immigration.
Right.
And even if you believe that immigration is in some way unfair or inappropriate, it is not the appropriate target to solve our problems, because it's going to have all of these unwanted negative effects on all of us to sort of kick these folks out. And now a last point. Immigrants mainly come here because the economies in which they were born and raised are unlivable. It's a very traumatic event to leave your home country, the language, the neighborhoods, the communities that you grew up in, where your family and your relatives and your friends are, and to go to another country where you never really know what kind of welcome you're going to get. You're going to have to learn a new language, new ways of function. It's scary and it's difficult, and people don't do it unless they are in real tough shape. Try to imagine, let me ask your audience, to imagine with me a country as shaky as Mexico, which is where many of these undocumented immigrants will be sent if Trump carries through with his threats. This is a country that barely survives now. There are large parts of Mexico into which the Mexican army cannot go because of the drug gangs and the drug business that has taken over huge parts of that country. There is no work that the millions of people that Mr. Trump will deport to Mexico, if he carries it through. There's no work for them there. There's no housing for them there. What in the world are you asking the Mexicans to do with these people they cannot accommodate, which is why they left to go to the United States in the first place? You're going to have a failed state on your border, your southern border. Do you want that here in the United States? Those people will end up working in the drug business because there is no other way to survive for millions of them. We're talking about unleashing changes that no rational person would pursue. So I have to believe that Mr. Trump used it to get elected, will either not go through with it, or he will cause a whirlwind if he tries, from which it'll take us a long time to recover.
Yeah, and I've always argued that our best interests, and when you talk about you want to be president, you have to put America's interests in the fore. And so our best interest is a prosperous Mexico, so we don't have a failed state on our border. And I've always argued that. It doesn't make any other sense. It doesn't make any sense any other way around. That's why we do trade deals. You want Mexico to do well so that you don't have to build walls. And that's
right. And if you really mean what he said, and you're not going to allow low immigrants to come in here, as we have done as a nation throughout the history of the United States, if you're going to close it off, you're not going to allow immigrants to come here, and you're going to have this, what he claims, the result is that Americans will get jobs that immigrants once got. Well, I can assure you that if Americans take those jobs, they're going to demand the kinds of salaries that American natives are used to. And when corporations discover that they now have a higher wage bill to pay for the people that are not undocumented immigrants, to whom they have to actually pay the going wage rates, et cetera, you know what's going to happen? Because that's how our economic system works. More and more companies are going to think about going abroad, because if you can't bring the low-wage worker here, you go to where the low-wage worker is.
Right, and that's what businesses are doing. They're shopping around the globe to find the lowest-waged worker they can find.
And if you shut that off, either the immigrant way of getting it or the globalization going out there to the rest of the world to get it, then the last thing that the employer will do is substitute a computer or a robot for you. You're living in a system that works this way, and all Mr. Trump is saying is, I'm going to solve your problem by closing off one of the ways capitalists make profit. And the silly thing about it is that capitalists have other ways of making profit that are just as bad for the mass of people. He's just playing kind of musical chairs among the different strategies that capitalists have, and hoping that people don't pay enough attention to see through the phoniness, the ineffectiveness of what he proposed.
Now, so now you've identified that he's gone after the bottom 1%, the least of us, the really vulnerable, the fleeing, the people who are, trying to get out of violence and abject poverty, and they come here. Okay, but isn't the reason for the unhappiness, for the anger, actually, in this country, isn't that a result of stagnant wages?
Absolutely. It's a result of not only stagnant wages, but let me make it as stark as I can.
Yeah.
In economics, we have this term we call in the profession real wages. And all that means is you adjust the wages people are getting for the prices they have to pay. In other words, it really doesn't help you to get 10% increase in your money wage. If the prices of everything you buy have gone up by 10%, you end up with not a nickel more than you had before, because your extra money in your pocket is having to be spent to pay the higher prices for what you buy. If you compare the real wage that the American worker on average got in 1978 to what the average worker in America gets today in 2016, it was higher then than it is now. In other words, we haven't increased what an average worker can get with what he or she earns in an average hour of their labor over the last 40 years. Now, during that time, workers became more and more productive. They had more machines, better computers, more training, had to work harder and faster. The end result is, over these 40 years, workers became more productive, which simply means they produced more for the employer for every hour that they worked. Meanwhile, the employer didn't give them more for every hour that they worked. The wages were stagnant to slightly declining, while their productivity went up. Well, there's the explanation for why the gap between rich and poor went crazy over the last 40 years. Because all of the extra production that workers were able to do went to their employers, who gave them no increase in wages as a result over the same period of time. That's the root of the economic problems we have, of the inequality we have. The rich became wildly richer, and knowing that our political system could always undo that, they turned to spend their money to buy the political parties. You see the whole evolution of our society coming out of these stagnant wages with rising productivity. To then turn around and blame the immigrant for all of this, when the immigrants had zippity-doo to do with it, is the kind of flim-flam, card-sharp maneuver that got Trump this victory.
And then, you look at the fact that, productivity goes up because we're being forced to do the jobs of 5 people now. Each person
right.
used to, right. And all of this benefits the very top 1% of the corporation or the top 1% of the economy. And then on top of it, you give this sort of a fake feeling of having money by extending credit to those workers whose money has stayed stagnant, has stayed the same, even though their productivity goes up, but the cost of things are going up at the same time, and it's pretty much a wash. So you say to them, all right, here's what we're going to do. Borrow against your house. Borrow at 30% on a credit card. Borrow. And that went on for years, didn't it?
Exactly. Look, there's a kind of tragedy here. You can almost cry when you understand it. You give the American working class this idea that we have an American dream that we're somehow entitled to. Mm-hmm. That if we work hard and we study hard and we apply ourselves and all the rest of it, we will do better than the generation before us, and our children will do better than we will, and all the rest.
Right.
And then, and it's true for a while, the 19th century and in the early half of the 20th century, you could make a case that things went pretty well. There are a lot of reasons for that, but what we do know is in the 1970s, it stopped. The wages stopped going up as corporations decided they could do better by moving production out of the country. They could do better by substituting machines and computers for people and all the rest of it. They are free in our free enterprise society to do that. They don't have to pay for the consequences, no matter how horrible they are. And now we have what? A working class which has been led to believe it's entitled to a rising standard of living, that where husbands and wives promise each other a rising standard of living, where they promise it to their children even more, that they will have an education, that they will get a good job, and suddenly the wages don't go up to pay for it all. Well, it's not surprising that the working class with those expectations, without the wages to pay for it, would turn to the only other way to get that done, and that's to borrow money. And the banks were all too willing to lend them, as you put it, at the very, very high credit card rates, whether it be for their homes or their credit cards or their automobiles. And then this new invention of the last 20 years, which is to plunge college students into a lifetime of debt peonage by making a college education require them to go tens of thousands of dollars into debt. It is a criminal experience for the American working class to be more and more pressured into debt anxiety on top of the fact that their wages are going nowhere. Of course they're upset. Of course they want change. And of course they're going to turn to politicians who seem to offer even the slimmest hope. We were all surprised, I believe, or most of us were, when in 2008, a young African-American person, Barack Obama, could actually claim to be a credible candidate for president in a country that had never elected an African-American to such a job. And I think he won in large part because he got across the idea that he was going to give you hope for real change. So people overcame whatever held them back about voting for African Americans and did it. And when they felt now that they hadn't gotten the change that they had hoped for from Mr. Obama, well, they were then prepared to go even further out on a limb for some credible hope for change. I don't think Trump merits it. I don't think Trump will fix their situation, probably make it much worse. But I see it all as a sign of a system that is really in an extreme bad situation, provoking its own people into a more and more desperate search for anything that will get them out of the way this system is working.
Yeah, and so they just vote for different now because they know that things can't stay the same. So, I appreciate that. But before you go, he's talking about this infrastructure package. The way he's doing it is kind of tax credits for businesses. It doesn't seem like a real government investment with real wages, with real labor. It seems like it's just going to be a giveaway, and then you'll end up with a toll road. Am I wrong about that? Should I?
No, you're absolutely right. The very proposals he's made fall far short of anything like a major jobs program of the sort this broken economy needs, number one. Number two, he has to get it through a Republican Party that dominates the Congress, that has, at least for the last 30 years, blocked, stopped this kind of program. So my guess is there'll have to be some sort of compromise between the already inadequate program Trump proposes and the one that the Republicans will let through in their domination of the Congress. And then you're right. Much of this has to do with very profitable contracts to construction companies, much of whose work is now done in an automatic way by big machines, not by hiring large numbers of workers. Yeah, this is going to be what I suspect much of the Trump administration will be. Lots of symbolism, lots of hype, but when you get right down to it, the number of jobs and the impact on the conditions of working people are likely to be very, very poor, if not negative. And here's a real risk with the infrastructure, a last point.
Okay.
The Republicans may very well say, okay, we will give you the infrastructure program you want, but we're not going to raise taxes on anybody to pay for it, and therefore we don't want to borrow either, because we've been telling our constituents that the deficit is the biggest problem in the world for 40 years, so we won't borrow to pay for the infrastructure, and we won't raise taxes. Well, then the only way left to fund an infrastructure program is to take the money away from other programs, like lending to students, like food stamps, like all the other things which a Republican majority Congress has been gunning for years anyway. So the working class may well discover a small number of jobs created in a infrastructure program paid for by a decimation of the public services that American working people need now more than ever.
Well, there are two things that Trump has said, and of course, he's, on any subject, there are always more than two things that he has said. Right. And on this particular issue of borrowing, he has said too many things, so I don't know where he is. He had said that, he was on CNBC one day. Nobody watches that except you and me. And he said, well, they asked him, what's the proper, a debt to GDP ratio for you? What would you like? And he didn't know what they were talking about. So he said, well, what I can tell you is the asset that we have is low interest rates. The interest rates are so low that to not borrow would be malpractice. He said, you must borrow. You have to borrow. So I know that somewhere in his head, it's always about other people's money, and he's thinking of borrowing. The other side of the coin might be the Republicans would like to be able to tell the American people they lowered taxes. And in that vein, they might be able to sell people, especially undereducated people. I hate to say it that way, but people that don't pay attention so closely, that what they'll do is they'll repatriate all this money that's offshore and they'll bring it in at 10%, and that money will be used for the infrastructure project. Is that viable?
No, let me explain very quickly.
Yeah.
It's so sad when that kind of argument is used. It makes my blood boil. Here's the law. The American big corporations, if they can show that they earned their money abroad, and if they put it into a bank account abroad rather than bring it home, thereby don't have to pay income taxes here in the United States.
Right.
By the way, many other countries do not permit corporations to do that. So we're not doing something that's normal practice. We're doing something that American corporations have gotten their government to do when many others don't. Having said that, when the American company puts their profits in a bank overseas and therefore, quote unquote, doesn't bring it home, there is nothing to prevent them from using the money in that account to do all kinds of things around the world, to invest here and there. To think that that money is just sitting there and has not been profitably invested by those companies, is to not understand how the financial system works. So you're not going to, for example, they can use that money over there to buy shares in an American company through the foreign stock exchange, and therefore move their money back into the United States through the account over there. That's all perfectly legal and still avoids them having to pay taxes. So they're not going to be doing anything big and different if you allow them to bring the money back into the country directly, because they've been doing it all indirectly.
And basically any penny they bring back, even if it's a low tax rate of 10%, is still 10% more than they're paying, and they can invest in America, through the stock market.
Yes, they always could, and therefore if you allow them to bring it back by giving them a lower tax rate, you've given them the whole game away. They only brought up all of this. They only went through that indirect route to escape taxes.
Right.
And if the response of the American government is, okay, well then we'll lower the taxes, you're inviting them to do that every 5 years. Indeed, they did it. And back in 2004,
right,
we did this. We lowered the taxes, and we had all these promises. Now the money will come back into the United States, and it will produce an investment bonanza.
And what did they buy, Professor Wolf?
There was no investment bonanza. That's why.
No, they bought shares in their own companies.
Yes, and they boosted their salaries. Because what people don't remember is when you cut the taxes for a corporation, all that means is money they used to give to the government, they now keep. What they will do with that money is their decision. They don't have to hire people with it. They can pay their executives more. They can build a factory in another country. Right. They can lend it to the U.S. government or another government. There is no one-to-one relationship between cutting the tax on a business and producing a job. That's why it's so phony when companies say, cut taxes on us and it will increase jobs. No, it won't. You cut taxes on business, that's what you've done. You've given them more money, but you haven't controlled in any way what they do with that money. And we've seen already historically that give them a tax cut and they will find wonderful ways for them to use the money other than creating jobs. And if you were really serious, a government that really represented us as people would say to them, we will give you a tax cut if and only if you use the money that you don't have to pay in taxes anymore to create at least X thousand jobs. If you really wanted to do what they claim they may do if you cut their taxes, then make that part of the law, and then you wouldn't have this sad situation of being told how cutting taxes will produce jobs, seeing it never result in that, and then having the nerve to tell us that again now.
Hey, it's unbelievable. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, Professor Richard Wolff. You can find him on Twitter at Prof. Wolf with 2 Fs, and he's got his own website, richardwolf.com. You're awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we reached out and that you accepted. Thank you.
Thank you. It'll be my pleasure. If you want to do it again, I'd love to talk with you.
Most definitely. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye. Love him because he's as plain spoken as I am. And yet he went to Yale twice and Stanford and Harvard, and I didn't. So there's some street cred for you, okay? Go look him up. He's got amazing work out there. Professor Richard Wolff with 2 Fs. Awesome. 5 o'clock.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Hi, we're back, and everything is possible again. Isn't it beautiful? Well, if you want to keep it this way, buy a stinking podcast. Oh yes, you have to buy a stinking podcast. And you get that at RandiRhodes.com, where we're open all day, all night long. RandiRhodes.com. Get your stinking podcast.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. Workers fighting for $15 an hour and a union at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago may strike during Thanksgiving. SEIU Local 1 is supporting the workers. Hundreds of workers, like Marcy Barnett, are expected to strike.
People need a living wage so they can meet just the common needs of everyday life. We have family to raise. Rent and food is so expensive. Anything less than 15 is an insult.
And Barnett says she and co-workers at O'Hare are determined to stay in this fight for a living wage and union rights.
No matter what you throw at us, we'll keep fighting. I have a saying that I hold on to. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I'm still here fighting for 15 union rights at O'Hare Airport for the workers that need them. They can fire me, but they can't stop me from speaking out and fighting for that right.
A federal appeals court in Kentucky has upheld local county anti-union laws known as right to work. That ruling reverses a lower court decision that had struck down Hardin County's anti-union law. Kentucky AFL-CIO President Bill Lonergan says unions will likely appeal to the full federal appeals court, and if they lose there, it's on to the U.S. Supreme Court. The right to work laws are designed to weaken unions by letting workers covered by union contracts skip paying dues. Moved by the Wisconsin spirit of resistance and protest, Pussy Riot co-founder Masha Alushina stopped by the Solidarity Sing-Along at the state capitol in Madison.
I've heard about Wisconsin protesters, and I really appreciate what you're doing. I hope we'll have something like this protest in Russia because, we have problems with music protesters.
We asked Masha what Americans should do in the face of a president like this.
When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the
Right.
Masha says, based on Wisconsin's worker uprising and other protests, Wisconsin has proven that it knows how to riot.
Brought to you by the IBEW, 725,000 men and women powering the way for an American comeback. Information on how to become an International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Power Professional is online at ibew.org.
Brought to you by UnionJobs.com, posting jobs for unions, socially allied, and community organizations since 1997.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Rich is just a really, really, really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
The Randi Rhodes Show is brought to you by our partners at ITM Trading. Call them at 1-888-OWN-GOLD and ask for a free gold kit. 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
We've been trumped. It's not good news for us.
I was shocked, especially because so many people voted for him. That's what the shock is, that there are so many people in the United States who would actually vote for him.
He seems to foster and breed a culture of intolerance, of hatred, and most of all, fear.
It's so evident now. This country believes in racism. This country believes in sexism, holding women down. This is such a clear vision of how much hate this country holds.
Regardless of what he says he's going to do, the biggest impact he's making is in the attitudes he's brought out in people. Because even if he doesn't do anything specifically with laws, speeches he makes, things he says, they put thoughts in people's heads, and then those people go out and just little things, little changes in everyday life and behavior.
I'm afraid he's going to set precedents about what is culturally acceptable here in the States, and a lot of those forces that have lied dormant now say, hey, we can talk about it now. Hey, we can brandish these things now.
What do you think could be the short-term effects to this pipeline over here and to this resistance?
So Trump, he said he wants to abolish the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency.
I think Trump, being Republican and leaning more conservative, I think he'd want the pipelines to move along even faster.
Well, I've seen what Trump does on the news when he has a protester in his rallies. He just says, get him out of here.
I think he's going to try immediately to attack the camp, but I don't think it's going to be as successful as he hopes it will be. I think it's going to take some time.
He's going to try to stop it. I wouldn't doubt if he sends the army in pretty soon, He's going to have to kill a lot of us, but it's not going to be that way. This is a prayerful, peaceful thing.
A lot of people are indifferent to it. What could happen any worse than what has already happened with broken treaties and Indian removal and, insult to injury with the conqueror's history constantly being told and taught in our schools that denies the truth of indigenous people's experiences. So I think with a lot of people, they're like, hey, welcome to the club,
Yeah, we're not going to be trumped. I refuse to be trumped.
Oh, it's so sad. I mean, look, this pipeline thing is it's a good illustrative example of the kind of reaction that a Trump administration will have to have to an ongoing protest. And, their point is they've seen what he does at protests. He just goes, get him out, get him out, get him out. And now you've got a peaceful protest out there in North Dakota, and they're protesting the safety of their water. They're called water protectors, and that is what they're protecting. They're protecting a lake that runs underneath the Missouri River. That's where the fresh water comes from for that area of the country, and they're facing and staring down a giant corporation, Energy Transfer. I think what are they called? Energy Transfer Partners. And Donald Trump, like I said, is the most conflicted man. People voted for Donald Trump knowing nothing about him because there was no way to know anything about him. So if people call you or tell you, well, I knew everything about him, you know nothing about him. All you know is that he talked like a racist. All you know is he talked like a misogynist. All you know is he talked like, he understood the life of Appalachian coal country, which is hysterical because I freaking understand it. I live there. I experienced it for myself. I understand what it is. It was like that 30 years ago when I got there. And it was like that before I got there for 20 before that. So this is a place that needs, an inordinate amount of love and care. This is a place that needs so much attention and time spent on it. And yet it keeps electing Republican governors, Republican legislators, Republican city council members, Republican everything. It gets the same result year after year after year. It won't even let us help it. It won't even let people like me explain it to them. It won't even let people like me talk to them. Okay? So, for Trump to sit there in his triplex on the 58th floor of Trump Tower and tell them that he understands, it's almost, if it wasn't that sad, it would be funny, but it's not funny because these are real people with real lives and children and high hopes and dreams dashed and, self-medicating because of those lost dreams. I understand that part of the country. So, but here you have a president that you know nothing about. And the answer is you can't know about him because he didn't show you anything. He told you a lot and he showed you nothing. He didn't show you tax returns. He didn't show you that he's conflicted around the world. He didn't show you that he's got at least 111 Trump companies in 18 different countries. He didn't show you that he does business in the Middle East. He didn't show you that he had business in Saudi Arabia. He didn't show you that he had business in China and in Indonesia. The biggest Muslim country in the world is Indonesia, home to the most Muslims in the world. He didn't show you that he's got a place that he's trying to build in Azerbaijan, which is one of the most oil-rich places in the world that the Soviet Union also wants to get its paws on. So bad they've already gone to war with them years ago. So you don't know anything about this guy. The only thing that people do know about this guy is he's thin-skinned and he doesn't like any opposing viewpoints. And so, yes, I worry about what's going to happen to these people in North Dakota, especially now. Because the Standing Rock Reservation, the only thing standing between losing their fresh water and having this company drill underneath a lake and a river that provides all the fresh water for that area. And how many years ago did I tell you the next wars will be fought over water? How many years ago did I tell you that? I said, when we started going to war in Iraq, they said, oh, it's for oil. And I said, you know what the solution to that is? Then you have to make what they have, those oil-rich countries, you have to make what they have worthless. And we've been fairly successful. We produce more clean energy in this country than any other country on the planet. We've been pretty successful at it. And we've been pretty successful at making what they have worthless. And that's the way you defeat the oil-rich oligarchies and the oil-rich authoritarian governments and the oil-rich, misogynistic countries. You just make what they have, what they supply themselves with to make money. You make that thing worthless. So the next focus in the world, which will never be a worthless commodity, is going to be water. And let me tell you something. The first Americans, the people who lived off the land the longest, up until 240 years ago, they did just fine. They know the value of water. Just saying. Now, they're out there peacefully protesting, and they are peacefully protesting, And you had last night 167 people injured, 7 taken to the hospital as a result of militarized police who attacked them with water cannons in 23-degree weather. So that, and also with mace, with rubber bullets, with pepper spray, they are being trapped and attacked. And all they're asking for you to do is pray for them. That's the only message that they put out. Pray for my people. Pray for my people. Now, the sheriff's department out there, Morton County, they're describing this as a ongoing riot. They're unarmed, and they're setting up prayer camps. But they do ride horses, and they say, oh, the horse is the deadly weapon. You see. So this now, you got a horse, well then, we'll get a rubber bullet. You got a horse, we'll get a pepper spray. You got a horse, we'll water cannon you right off. But they are unarmed, and all they are doing is protecting their water. And so far, there's been tasers and sound weapons and pepper spray and tear gas and rubber bullets. And last night, I couldn't believe 23-degree weather. They were spraying these people with water cannons. These are spiritual camps on the banks of the Missouri River that have been established by them because the one thing that's standing in the way of the actual drilling underneath the lake and underneath the river is one last permit. Obama has not issued that one last permit. The Army Corps of Engineers has not issued that one last permit. And so Energy Transfer Partners still lacks that one final permit to drill under the river. That's why they're out there. Now, what the police have done is they burned a couple of trucks, believe it or not, the police did, and they formed a barricade on a bridge that, goes over the water. And they put that barricade there so that people couldn't get to the spiritual camps. They burned those trucks and left them on the bridge so people would have to go out of their way like another hour through the moon-like terrain of North Dakota. Ever been to North Dakota? Looks like the moon. I've been to North Dakota. And so law enforcement erected this giant barricade, forcing all the traffic to take a big, long 20-mile detour. Now, it isn't safe for the people in the camp because when they're injured, they need the most direct route to the town, okay? They need the most direct route to the nearest hospital. They need the most direct, right? And what they did was they trapped them, barricaded them in an area by putting these burnt trucks on the bridge, started shooting at them with, non-lethal weapons, injuring them, and then they had to detour another 20 miles to get those injured or hypothermic people to medical attention. That's what's going on out there. That is just disgusting. Now, Donald Trump is a financial owner. He is an investment owner. He has ownership in Energy Transfer Partners. Again, another conflict of interest for a president. A president should have all his stuff sold off. They made Jimmy Carter sell his damn peanut farm, for God's sake. Remember that? They made him sell his damn peanut farm that he loved. He loved that little peanut farm in Plains, Georgia. They made him sell it. He sold it because he was in public service now. When will Trump sell everything he owns and put it into treasury bills, just like the President Obama? All his money's in treasuries. All his money. So that there would never even be a shred of thought that Obama might be enriching his business interests. His business interests are the Treasury. It's the United States. He only owns Treasury notes. That's it. And if you notice, they haven't really done very well because interest rates are so low. But this man will never do that. So Donald Trump, through his own financial disclosure documents, has indicated, and we don't know if he was willing to perjure himself or not, but he's indicated that he's invested anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million in Energy Transfer Partners. So what do you think he's going to do to these Native Americans? What do you think he's going to do to this peaceful protest? What do you think he's going to do to them? They think they're about to get killed. They really believe it, and they're willing to die for it. Now, what happened last night was, if you saw the Periscope that I was, trying to disseminate, that the activists moved one of the trucks. They were able to successfully move one of the trucks out of the way so that they could not have a 20-mile detour when they were trying to get people to medical help. And law enforcement responded with tear gas, water cannons, and other weapons. That's what you were watching last night. And it almost makes me not want to celebrate Thanksgiving in the whole charade of that story. But that's what's going on out there. And because the president is so freaking conflicted on every front, from foreign policy, because he's got interests in Saudi Arabia, he's got two towers in Turkey and Istanbul, he's got he's got buildings in Indonesia, which is the largest Muslim country on the planet. Why people believe anything he says, I have no earthly idea. But I kept telling, everybody that they don't know him. You're voting for somebody that you do not know. All they knew was he was sufficiently racist enough, and they didn't care what the hell he was going to say, and that he was different. That he used, bad language, and he said, MF, and he said, bomb the shit out of them. And, he said these kinds of things. That was it. That's all they needed to know. And that does tell you that this country is desperate for something to change. But the sad truth is, it will change with Trump, but it will get worse. And he will end up getting impeached. If, God forbid, a hair on the head of these people in North Dakota should be terminated, okay? If any of these people are killed, which is what they're expecting to happen to themselves, are killed with Trump as the president, still invested in Energy Transfer Partners to the tune of $500,000, or I don't care if it's 25 cents. He has violated the Constitution. It's the emollients clause. It's in Article 1. He is impeachable at that exact moment. One of their lives is an impeachable offense. You understand? Because he is financially in bed with Energy Transfer Partners. Now, I fully expect that the day he takes office, he'll issue the permit. But that's not going to stop them from sitting there. It's not going to stop them in the freezing dead of winter. Remember, it'll be January 20th. In the freezing dead of winter, they will stay there. They will heat their teepees. They will stay there. They will have food. They know how to survive on that land. They've been doing it for centuries, way before we were, and they will stay there. And God help them, but just know, whatever happens there, if it turns out to be something horrific, bye-bye, Trump. So long. And that's just the beginning of the most noticeable, glaring conflicts this man has. His daughter's already been in meetings with the Japanese prime minister. I mean, he tweeted a picture of him meeting with the high-ranking Indian government officials who he's in bed with in Mumbai.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Well, the unthinkables happened. We have Donald Trump moving into the White House in 2017. Of course, this move brings extreme uncertainty to our country's financial future. I mean, you got the Don and his crew moving into the White House now, and who knows what they'll do to our economy. When he moves into the White House, everyone needs to get their own financial house in order before the Don and the crew have the time to do some serious economic damage to this country. Now, when it's time for financial security, it's time for gold. So call my friends at ITM Trading. Get a free gold kit. Learn why gold survives every government, every currency, every economic crisis. Gold's always brought its owners security in uncertain times just like this. Call ITM Trading at 1-888-OWN-GOLD. Get expert guidance from their precious metals consultants. They've helped tens of thousands of people navigate this market. They have the best reputation in the industry. Call 1-888-OWN-GOLD, 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
This is Tara Devlin, a.k.a. Pterodactyl from RepublicanDirtyTricks.com on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn. And this is my 2-minute tirade. Contrary to Republican revisionist history, as students of the liberal age of enlightenment, the founders were progressives. Yes, I know they were slaveholders, misogynists, and hypocrites, but we're talking about progress, people, progress. And while the conservatives pledged their loyalty to the king, it was progress to pledge your life, fortune, and sacred honor to each other, and dare design a democratic system. History teaches us that time marches on, but people are pretty much the same. Sadly, we've yet to evolve enough to overcome some of the worst aspects of the human condition that allowed a racist, misogynist, ignorant, man-child, trust fund entitled, tax-dodging, malignant narcissist to get his greedy, tiny hands around the neck of power. Conservatives are fundamentally undemocratic, so they have no moral qualms latching onto an overt authoritarian fascist, hoping he'll help them fulfill their ultimate goal of ending pesky democracy once and for all. You see, Republicans loathe democracy because it gets in the way of their plans to turn everything into a host for the parasitic 1% to suck profit. But face it, American fascism was decades in the making, and Republicans didn't do it alone. DLC New Democrats turned their back on the New Deal, creating the fertile ground of economic disparity where fascism took root. Now we have to pledge our lives, fortunes, and sacred honor to each other yet again, and prevent conservatives from ripping us apart, cultivating every fissure of disunity, destroying our health, wealth, pursuit of happiness, all in the name of garnering favor from an emotionally stunted reality TV star who thinks President of the United States is just another way today's Americans refer to their king. This is Tara Devlin from RepublicanDirtyTricks.com. Go there and find links to my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram communities, and keep listening for 2-minute tirades and more on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn. We stick together, we win.
All things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randi Rhodes Show.
But I also came to tell you that you've got a special visitor. This is Peter Choxell. He led our campaign office in Western Virginia.
Mr. Trump, it is an honor, sir.
Nice to meet you, Peter. So where are you from?
Virginia, sir. It's a little town called Grundy. And that's coal country, sir. I've been out of work for 2 years now. Rough times, but then you came and said that you were going to bring every single job back to our town.
Every single one?
Yes, sir. Hell, if you could build a wall that's 2,000 miles long on the Mexican border, I'm sure you could help us.
How long is that wall?
It's 2,000 miles.
2,000 American miles?
I cannot wait to see the look on those Mexicans' faces when you make them pay for that wall. They say it's going to cost $25 billion.
Fantastic, Pedro. Thank you very much. $25 billion? It can't be that much. Oh, God. Oh, God. Don't worry, Donald. It'll be okay. Hillary's still ahead in the polls.
Mr. Trump?
Yes, Kellyanne, what's the matter? Is there something on your shoulder?
Yes. All of this. Also, Mitt Romney is here.
Really? Okay. Send him in, please.
Yeah. Okay. Yay.
Hello, Mr. President-elect. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me.
Governor Romney, so good of you to come.
This isn't going to work, is it?
I don't think so.
Great, okay. I'm going to hit the pro shop.
He's such a fraud. All right. Wendy in Portland, Oregon.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Wendy.
Welcome back. I'm so glad you're back on the air.
Thank you. Me too.
Hey, so, I'm in Portland, Oregon, the land of the White Riot.
Yes, what happened? How did you lose your shit so bad?
It's not as bad as it sounds. Like, on election night, the protest started super late, and the police actually said, they said nothing, which most of us interpret to mean that they were on our side. They let the protesters, and I wasn't out there, I would say that, but they let the protesters take the freeway on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. It was, like, kind of shocking. But by the third or fourth or fifth night, the anarchists and the troublemakers were, hanging around late. And, the rest of us normal white folks, because Portland is super white, we know it, we went home to bed, and the bad kids came out. And I also wanted to say, in Oregon, where we have vote by mail, that 79% of registered voters voted.
Yeah, well, they don't care about all white people. This thing that we have called voter suppression, that's called the Southern strategy.
Yeah,
it's not to prevent you so much from voting. It's to prevent the Southern states, blacks, from voting.
I know. Oregon, I'm lucky to live in Oregon, which is pretty reliably blue and not very suppressed. So I know that. So I had a second question.
Yes.
So I hope you're right on the Republicans actually impeaching Trump, but I just sort of feel like, what will he have to do? He's their guy for now. Do you think they'll go right at him, really?
He's their guy for now, but you know what? There's so many of them that don't like him. There's so many of them that are embarrassed by him. There's so many of them. Think about it. Ted Cruz wouldn't endorse him. Jason Chaffetz said he couldn't look his 15-year-old daughter in the eye and say he endorsed Trump. But he voted for him. Yes, they are extremely flawed in the moral arena, in the ethical arena. But this man, the second he comes in there and the second he starts advocating for the positions that he promised he would advocate for, meaning he's going to have to do term limits, right? He said that. He told people he's draining the swamp, going to do term limits. He's not going to let any of these senators or House members leave their jobs and go be lobbyists, which is what happens now. They're going to turn on him because they are so ethically challenged and because they are immoral in their whole being, and every fiber of their being is about self-enrichment. They will take him out.
God, I hope you're right. You are right. They are all about self-enrichment.
Yeah, they are.
I'm just wondering, as long as he lets them continue enriching themselves and doesn't get in the way of their agenda, why not let him
term limits? Really?
Oh no! Well, yeah,
term limits with a ban on lobbying. Come on, that's their bread and butter. That's the career path. That's their service. There's no public service. There's service in order to get a job as a lobbyist at a big lobby shop on K Street. That's the service that's the service business they're in. Servicing the corporations. And, if Trump comes at them with things like, we're going to term limit and there'll be a ban on lobbying and the revolving door is absolutely closed. And that's it. They're done. He's gone. Get rid of him. Who needs him? Never liked him anyway.
So you actually think he'll come at them with his promises? I think he's going to renege on all of them.
Well, that's possible too. And in that case, the people turn on him. So either way, he can't win.
Good. More white riots in Portland.
No, he's painted himself into quite the corner. Either he makes enemies out of every single person he needs to vote for his proposals, or he makes enemies of every single person who voted for him.
Yeah, that's right. That is what will happen.
That's the problem with rhetoric like this. You can't keep your promises. You can't even get near them. He couldn't possibly get near them without alienating one giant group or another giant group, either all of Congress or all of his voters.
Yep.
Yeah. But you see, the weird thing about his voters are, you know what they'll do? I know what they'll do because they've done it before. They'll go, I didn't vote for him. I always thought he was racist. Paul in Woodinville, Washington.
Hi, Randy.
Hi.
Well, in terms of the impeachment, just quickly, if the Republicans decide to impeach him, and I believe that is possible, I hope the Democrats in the Senate are smart enough not to vote for conviction and removal from office.
Because of Pence?
Huh?
Because of Pence?
Yeah, make them wear this guy the whole 4 years. The Republicans need 9 Democrats in the Senate to convict, so the Democrats better be smart enough not to say, oh, good, let's impeach him. No. Just say, no, sorry, we don't. If he was good enough for you then, he's good enough for you now. But, Randy, I want I get a little bit of an argument with you.
So,
I mean,
so you would rather the voters turn on him than Congress?
Oh, absolutely. He's the vote. We have to make America suffer all the pain. You got to hit rock bottom. The old saying, you got to hit rock bottom before you're willing to stand up.
Yeah, it's true. Out of every crisis in America, there's always a great recovery. I mean, there's always something, positive that comes out of, learning your lesson. So,
right.
Yeah.
So, I say by an argument, I mean not a nasty argument, but talk to me about my feeling right here. Isn't it time the Democratic Party dump the working ignorant? We keep talking about how, these people who they vote against their best interest all the time. Most of the people that voted for Donald Trump are the uneducated, working people who, if you look at the demographic, they're people who graduated from high school about the time you and I did, 75, 76, 77, up through maybe early 90s. I got to tell you, if you graduated around those years, you got your high school education and you went and got a manufacturing job or a factory job and you didn't do a goddamn thing to improve yourself in the meantime, and now you're pissed off that your job's outsourced and you have low wages and you're blaming it on NAFTA and immigrants, here's what I have for you. Fuck you.
No.
Really. And you're going to vote for Donald Trump? And yet they still depend on age-old Democratic policies like, hey, your 40-hour work week and paid overtime. They think that they take that for granted. I say, get rid of them at minimum wage. See how your life is then. The Democrats got to stop standing up for these people who continue to turn around and kick us in the ass.
Well, so following your heart's desire, which is to not have Congress turn on him, but to have the people turn on him.
Right.
This is not the way to get them to join us.
Well, where do they have to go? That's the point. Is if
they go even crazier. Unless they felt that we understood them, unless they felt that we told, instead of saying "I told you so," just welcome them in as a convert.
Well, they can, but look at it. When you talk about, for instance, the professor was talking about, Professor Wolf was talking about, these people have gotten so desperate they voted for a despot.
Right. And that's right. That's right. That was one of the most valuable points he made outside of, teaching us about how tax breaks don't create one single job. But
exactly right.
Okay,
exactly.
so good. But yes, that's why I love him, because he can make these concepts super accessible and simple. But if you have a desperate population out there and you know that they will vote for anybody that promises change, this was what they always say is a change election. But this one was truly a change election. And so was 2008, because the economy had been driven off a freaking cliff by the Republicans. Obama came in and he fixed things, and then the Republican Congress came in a couple of, a year later and stopped all progress. Now, Hillary should have been standing there on every single stage she stood on with every single microphone she held. The first thing she should have talked about was the do-nothing Republican Congress, who blocked and impeded every chance we had at progress, and how this is going to change. This is going to change because you're going to vote and you're going to make it change. She never did. She never, sold the change story. These people obviously are desperate for change, so much so that they threw in with a known racist. Now,
okay, how do you sell things like free college, so to speak, to people who don't value that? Free college. What do I need with a college education? You remember how it was?
So they don't. People... That's fine. No, no college. That's fine. She also had, a pre-K for every 4-year-old. Now, every single mother who has, a toddler at home knows she's got to sit there and do the back of the envelope math to figure out if it's even worth for her to go out and at $7.35 an hour and stock shelves at Walmart when childcare costs her, $200 a week.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, but why are they? But then why do they? Because it's a gut feeling. These are the French Revolution people. They're so PO'd that they tear down. They want to tear it all down, and next thing they end up with Napoleon. That's what they have, and it's not going to get them anywhere.
Well,
they're going to be worse off.
Have you seen Michael Flynn lately? He's a tiny little Napoleon, isn't he? He's a teeny tiny man. Oh my God, isn't he? Yeah, he's a Napoleon. He scares me, that dude. No, but I guess Donald Trump figures that what he'll do is start a war. I'm guessing Iran, and all of our young people in these places with no future will suddenly feel all patriotic, and they will join, and they will go, and they will fight in the big Western versus Muslim civilization, the clash of civilizations, and he'll weed them out that way.
Right. Well, we'll pull out of the Iran nuclear deal. That will cause it all to fall apart. And then, of course, they'll say, Iran's making nuclear weapons. Now we have to bomb them.
Well, no,
you can see that happening. Or
that's how they'll sell it. That's how they'll sell it. But
exactly.
But here's the real reason why it's going to happen. The real reason why it's going to happen is because the Saudis hate the Iranians. Why? Right. Sunni, Shia, right? The Saudis are the actual manufacturers of this radical Islamist Wahhabism, right? Which is the virulent, violent strain of Islam that predominates the thinking of ISIS fighters. But the Saudis, they hate Iran because Iran's Shia and they're Sunni. And Donald's got business in Saudi Arabia, business that probably none of his followers even were aware of, but he does. And if the Saudis say, you know what, just let's take out Iran, let the Russians take out, let the Russians kill all the Syrians and let Assad stay there. Syria's too small, to worry about. Let the Russians have it. Putin seems to want it really bad. We'll take Iran. So he'll have the Syrian oil. You'll have the Iranian oil. Let's do it. And somebody's going to sit around and explain to him, you see, this is a good solution, President Trump, because this is when all the young kids, the 19-year-olds who are just, futzing around on oxycodone, this is when they'll join. And you can get rid of 1 million of them that way.
Yeah, but none of these facts that you point out, they didn't care. The people didn't care. They didn't care that the guy, he's on video saying he's going to grab women by the genitals. None of these.
That was appealing to them.
Yeah, because it's what resonates with the unsophisticated, the working ignorant, is racism, bigotry, and misogyny.
But
and
you see, while I understand your point, and I think that's so true among a certain percentage of his voters, and those are the basket of deplorables, those people, but not all the voters. First of all, only 43% of America even voted. Okay, that's pretty sick. Okay, so when you think about who voted for him, there are people who aren't undereducated, but never knew anything about really his global business ties, who he was loyal to, that he speaks to the Saudis, that he's got business with the Saudis, that the global landscape is such that the Saudis want Iran gone. Russia wants Assad in Syria.
Right.
Okay, and everybody else be damned, because this is where the money is.
And we're still not going to see Trump's tax returns ever. Yep, and that would have exposed it all.
Yes, it would have.
Yep, but not now.
No, not now. Not now. But you can't, look, I mean, there are critically undereducated, ill-informed people in both parties. All parties. I don't care what party. Libertarian, Green Party, Reform Party, Republican Party, Democratic Party. I don't care. There are so many ill-informed people. It's insane. It's just a bad thing. It's got lots to do with fake news, lots to do. In fact, in the homework section today, there's a section called Fake News. Where does it come from? Read that. It's fun reading, because even though I believe it's a New York Times article, it's hysterical how these two kids, who are really liberal kids, played these Trump supporters so that they could make money. And they made big money off of these crazy headlines that were nothing but stuff that they thought of. They just made it up. It was full of no fact, no innuendo. And they're quoted as, but nobody fact checks anything. And we were making so much money. And one of them says, this would be a good time to start a liberal publication. And the other one says, yeah, I'd really like to do that. And then they go back to posting, Hillary Clinton, did the most disgusting thing today. Click here. You won't believe it. But there are some very ill-informed people. But if you say that the racist, misogynist, homophobic, are the same as the people who don't read newspapers or the people who don't understand the world around them, but they still have to make decisions, then you are doing us a really big disservice in this way. They will convert because things are going to get so freaking bad. We are going to go to war. There is no question in my mind. And their kids will be the very first ones at the recruiter's office. This uber patriotism, this nationalism, it will make them do that.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit RandiRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
Here's what's happening on the Leslie Marshall Show on the Progressive Voices Network. Dr. Harlan Ullman is our guest. Could Donald Trump really dismantle the Iran nuclear deal? And is this rhetoric that Trump is putting out there, was that for votes? Was it to appease Bibi over in Israel?
I can't get inside his brain. He never read the agreement. A lot of his supporters never read the agreement. When they said that's the worst deal that they've ever seen, he's never read it. So that's just absurd. So I don't have any idea why he said the things he did. I think that they were crazy about this. But just like saying that he's going to revamp NAFTA, it doesn't work that way. This is not a bilateral situation. He's not having a negotiation with somebody to build a hotel. He's not negotiating with a bank. He's negotiating with many, many other countries. And if those countries decide that they're not interested in negotiation, he can try and withdraw from NAFTA, but that's going to really hurt the United States economy.
So we have a group of nations that we are a part of. This is not only a hard thing to do. President Obama said that it is also hard to justify and that this deal is working. Would you agree with both of those points?
Absolutely.
And can you explain why?
And the alternative, very simply, is that you want to go to war with Iran. And the answer is, of course not. And the deal is working. We've got inspectors on the ground. Iran is abiding by what it agreed to, and so is the West.
Why do you think so many Americans don't hear that or don't believe that?
Well, first of all, I think since the Vietnam War and all the difficulties we've had with Watergate, the resignation of Nixon, on and on and on, the Second Iraq War, that institutions in this country have lost credibility. The only institution I can think of that's being held in high regard is the military. But everything from the Catholic Church to the Boy Scouts to the Congress to the media is being held with great contempt. And so I think Americans have just become very skeptical, cynical, and disbelieving of their government. And so they don't want to believe what the government says. And I don't think the government has made a particularly strong case, by the way, in some of these issues. We have government that's obviously broken, and fixing it is not going to be particularly easy. We have an American society, in my judgment, which is really quite fearful about the future. And that fear has transformed itself into anger and fury because people can't make enough to survive on health care, education of children, et cetera, et cetera. The notion that 70% of Americans think we're on the wrong track and think that their children and grandchildren will not live as well as they did has caused this degree of cynicism and negativism to break out. That's why Donald Trump was elected. That's why Bernie Sanders did so well. And so you have to overcome that. And so for those reasons, sometimes no matter what a government says, if somebody says that's nonsense, people will believe the nonsense because they really don't want to engage the time to look at what's the truth and what's fact, because they simply have stopped believing in the reliability and the integrity of their government.
Catch my show, The Leslie Marshall Show, Monday to Friday on the Progressive Voices Network.
The Randi Rhodes Show is brought to you by our partners at ITM Trading. Call them at 1-888-OWN-GOLD and ask for a free gold kit. 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
All right, Linwood in Charlottesville.
Randi,
hey.
I've been enjoying the show, and the reason why I called because I did agree with what Professor Wolf would say. But I was listening to NPR, which is, boring radio. And this Kentucky Democratic congressperson, or I think counselor that was voted out of office 2 years ago, said something that kind of, like the last caller, kind of pissed me off a bit. He said, well, the Democratic Party can't really be for the people if you're only concentrating in cities. Well, let's see here, Mr. Kentucky Democrat. So every time that whether President Obama, a President Clinton, a Jimmy Carter, every Democrat, white, black, whatever, has tried this tactic, has tried to work with these rural working class white voters, try to get them on the same page with us, try to push the policies that appeal to them, they shit back in our face. And so I'm thinking to myself, why the hell should we give a good goddamn about these people if they really don't? If they see that they're being fucked behind the eight ball, but they don't want to believe the fuckery, why should we have to continue to constantly keep trying to be Captain Save-A-Ho? Let the hoe drown in the swamp.
Because they vote.
They vote, but it's like trying to get a horse to drink water. We cannot get these people to drink water, so why the hell we keep bothering? We need to just keep our base where it is and fight for what we believe in and stand for what we believe. If they want to come on the boat, they should come. If they don't, the hell with it. It's tiresome. It's tiresome.
Well, maybe we haven't shown them enough. Maybe we haven't.
I mean, well, what do you feel that we need to show them? Because we've did everything. We've bent over backwards for these people. And we've even neglected some of the people that really, truly fight for this party. We've left labor in the cold. We left African Americans in the cold. We pushed the gay agenda for the wrong causes. The Native Americans, we left them out in the cold, and they're fighting that battle up in North Dakota all by them damn selves.
Yeah, they are.
With none of us at the table.
And that's what's going on in rural America. They're fighting it all by themselves. They're lonely voices in the middle of the wilderness, and they don't see a better future. They don't see their kids doing any better than they did, and they don't see that they did any better than their parents, and they didn't see their parents do better than their grandparents. And it's an endless cycle of grinding poverty, and and they're sick of it, but they're just grasping at straws. They're grasping at anybody that steps up to the microphone and promises them a better day. It gets their vote, and we haven't told them anything. We don't tell them anything except that they're racist and they're ignorant and that they don't know. And
they are, because let's sit back and look. They are.
Well, the first thing we need to do is get them off drugs. I don't think you understand how drug-addled that part of the country is.
If they want to be on the drugs,
it's not a choice. It's a disease, and Big Pharma put it right square in the middle of the country.
Oh hell yeah!
All right.
So now,
remember all the
here.
Yeah. So remember all the conversations we used to have back in the Reagan days when we knew that they were putting crack cocaine into California, into inner cities, Oakland and Watts and all the right. Okay, so the
chickens have come home to roost.
Well, no, not the chickens. See, that's the wrong attitude. When everybody was outraged that crack cocaine went to the big cities, and that crack cocaine had a different punishment than powder cocaine, which is what the white people were doing. All of a sudden, we had a war on, crack cocaine, and we wanted, justice reform. We wanted criminal justice, which you can kiss goodbye now. But the same thing's got to happen for rural America. Big Pharma, Purdue, especially with oxycodone, got everybody down there. They wrote prescriptions for the rheumatiz. You got the rheumatiz, or half of them are on disability because it's the only way that a check will come. Okay, it's the only way. So, all right. So they're on disability, and then the doctor prescribes these hospice medications, which are for end of life, not for living a life, and then they can't afford it anymore. The doctor says, "I've seen enough of you," or "I'm going to get in trouble because the DEA is cracking down," or whatever it is, and then they go to heroin. So we need to recognize that there is a mass, slaughter of rural America. We have to talk about it, and acknowledge that we know what's going on there.
And excuse me for using the Malcolm X slogan, "The chickens have come home to roost." But when crack cocaine was being pushed by this government to fund the Contras in Nicaragua, and that was all government set up, now the corporations is now pushing the crack to these white folks out here. As I said before, the chickens have come home to roost.
It's the wrong. That's what they. I understand.
When you put the poison pill in one population to fund,
it's not going to help. It's not going to help. It's not going to help. Not going to help.
Hear me out. Hear me out, Randy. Hear me out. When you use a narcotic drug to destroy thousands of families, to fund anti-communist regimes in other foreign countries. Now you sat here and you laid up in bed and did the Dougie with these big pharma companies. Now these the same corporate white boys in the suits and ties now peddling your kids crack cocaine, aka opium, aka OxyContin.
Right.
The chickens have now come home to roost. So you reap what you sow. White America is reaping the benefits of what it sowed. So now here's my solution to this problem.
See, and
you now push cocaine to the ghetto. Now you're pushing cocaine to the trailer parks. Now, what's your solution?
Well, the first thing is that, they've got a disease, and we need to, make sure that everybody understands it's a disease.
Black America had a disease, and in Black America, we were just selling the dope because we had the same thing that's happening out here in rural America. Happening in the hood.
So you're saying
selling the coke because the same thing that's happening out here is what happened back out there. When the manufacturing base left the urban centers and it came out here to the rural areas, now they're leaving the same. It's like I said again. Chickens have come home to roost. The same cycle is repeating itself. It's just repeating itself in another way. And now people
are you done?
Need to go out there.
Stop.
Okay. Shoot me.
Two wrongs don't make a right.
Well,
and America needs to have a country that isn't drug-addled or alcohol-addicted. America needs to have a country of people who can read a newspaper and can understand what fake news is and what real news is. We need a country of people who actually understand the world around them, and it's not going to happen because two wrongs make a right in your world. Because what happened to the inner city in the 80s under Reagan is now happening to rural America in the 2000s. I mean, it's a crime. It's a crime against humanity. And if one person is oppressed, then everyone is oppressed. It's just that simple. Two wrongs don't make a right. Never did, never will.
But until America, and I'm going to say this again, until America fixes its two wrongs don't make a right syndrome, you're going to continue to have the bad seeds being sown. This seed had been sown by our government.
But in your illustration here, in your rant, there is no leadership.
Oh, hell no.
Okay, so I want to be that leadership. I think we need to be that leadership. Okay, so then you can't. Then you can't run around. Then you can't run around. Yes, you can. Oh, yes, you can invite people to your table. Oh, yes, you can. You can model behavior. You can actually show somebody something by showing them compassion and showing them that you understand what happened. Explain to them in terms they can understand that what happened to them. Just, lay it out there in a sincere and compassionate way. There is no such thing as two wrongs make a right. And in this whole, episodic, adventure of a presidential election, there was no discussion of anything that meant anything to anybody. By either side, there was no discussion of policy. There was no discussion of drug addiction. Okay, there was very little. You know why? Because they were shocked, I tell you, shocked that they went to New Hampshire and they went to Western Massachusetts and they went to certain white places and they went, oh my God, everyone in New Hampshire, everyone in Vermont, everyone in Western Massachusetts wants to talk to us about heroin. What the hell is going on? Well, that's because they were in their bubble. There's no leadership in this country. None. Donald Trump was just, they always say in a vacuum, they will listen to anybody who steps up to the microphone. Donald Trump was the only person that stepped up to the microphone and said, I know you're pissed off. And they said, oh, somebody hears us. What else do you have to say? I will make America great again. Oh, thank God. I alone can fix it. You know what that was about? Yes, it was authoritarian. It was saying to them, I know you can't. I know you're not in a place where you can do anything. I know you feel powerless. I'll be your voice. Only I can fix it. It was the most ridiculous thing to say, unless you were marketing. I mean, it was the most ridiculous thing for a real leader to say, for an American leader to say, for a serious person to say. It's just a ridiculous, ridiculous thing to say. But in the absence of any other leadership, he got to say over and over in prime time, because he was always on in prime time, always, always, always. Man's a marketing freaking lunatic genius, evil genius, because he's only marketing for his own benefit. And you can find that out by seeing all the conflicts of interest this guy has and the fact that he's not going to sell everything. His name is a thing of value because he marketed it and branded it, right? So the Trump name alone, now it's going to be the President of the United States name. You can't even quantify what it's worth now, and he's going to accept the money for this name while he's president. So the only choice we have is to make it worthless. You always take the thing of value and make it worthless in war. And yes, this is war because he's at war against us. He's at war against every decent person in this country. And the people who voted for him, I got news for you. He's at war with you too. And he wants your kids. And knowing some of them, they will send their children. This is crazy, but this is really where we are. We are in a crazy, crazy place. And that's because our elections are getting crazier and crazier. The media is totally lost its way. Totally. It doesn't even know what it's supposed to be doing. All that's left are newspapers. Seriously. That's it. And there are fewer and fewer of the reporters that we come to know and love out there. So now we're having to read foreign newspapers. This is a crime. The free press was always the holy grail in this country, and there's a reason why.